way you beat a guy like that, you're not going to outbox him. If you're waiting on him and he's initiating and he's feinting you into counters and then he's countering the counter, you're going to lose that fight.
You know AJ's chin's gone, right? Like, and I'm not saying that I believe that. I don't believe that. I think getting beaten up by Daniel Dubois does not mean your chin's gone, especially when you keep getting up and you managed to rock him late in the fight and you stayed in the fight. And I think Daniel Dubois is a freak like, you know, AJ is a freak. He's a one-off. He's not, Jake Paul is not Daniel Dubois. But some people are genuinely giving Jake Paul a chance. That's blowing my mind here.
Now looking at the age difference, we've got 28 years old compared to 36 years old. So I guess the advantage there goes a little bit towards Jake Paul. 28-year-old is better than a 36-year-old.
Max Kellerman recently laid out why he thinks Jake Paul could topple Anthony Joshua. In Kellerman's view, Joshua still has elite skills and the resume of a former heavyweight king. But time may be catching up with him. Jake, on the other hand, brings youth, hunger, and self-belief into every exchange. Kellerman suggests that for Joshua to win, he'll need to fight with the urgency and pace of a younger version of himself, staying busy, taking the initiative, and refusing to let Jake out-hustle him.
And he's feinting you into counters and then he's countering the counter, you're going to lose that fight. Joshua has to impose his size, strength, youth, go to the body. He has to be willing to take certain risks. And if he does that, that's a winnable fight for him.
Kellerman argues that Jake isn't walking into this fight blind. He's carrying experience from multiple big night events. He claims Jake has weathered pressure, adjusted to hostile environments, and learned how to stay composed when the spotlight gets intense. According to Kellerman, Jake won't crumble from nerves and might even thrive under the magnitude of the moment. Kellerman even took it a step further, saying Jake has a 100% chance, not because victory is guaranteed, but because Jake is completely sold on his preparation, his confidence, and the people guiding his camp. Meanwhile, some analysts are warning that Joshua is no longer the same explosive athlete he once was. They argue his reflexes aren't as sharp and that he's more hittable than during his prime undefeated stretch, making an upset more plausible than casual fans think.
Experience that Jake has gained in the 5 years he's been in the sport. To be in your 12th or 13th fight in front of 80,000 people at AT&T Stadium in front of 125 million viewers, that's not experience you can gain normally. So he's gonna go into that event very calm and very composed. And I fully believe that he does 100% think he's going to beat Anthony Joshua, yes.
What about the weight? Will there be a limit for Joshua?
So there's a lot of discussion around the weight. Joshua fought Usyk twice. Both of those times, Usyk was 221 pounds. Joshua was 240 to 245. When Jake fought Mike Tyson last year, 227 pounds. I expect Jake will come in anywhere between 225 and 230, and Anthony Joshua has a weight limit of 245 pounds.
There will be those, as you're aware, that will look at it and criticise this fight. There already have been, haven't there? They'll say it's a real mismatch. What would you say to them? Are we going to be watching sport at its purest?
I would say it's much less of a mismatch than what you saw with AJ and Francis Ngannou, who a massive man, but relatively no boxing experience. I would say it's much less of a mismatch than AJ's 9th or 10th fight against guys who've been knocked out 20 to 25 times. Given AJ's pedigree, Jake is built for this. Jake is built for the big moments. So do I think it's dangerous for Jake Paul? Absolutely. Do I think it's also dangerous for Anthony Joshua? 100%.
I mean, we're just watching some of these punches being thrown now. Can he take something like that, Jake Paul?
Hey, Alexander Usyk took it, right? I think that was a perfect 1-2 combination by Joshua, again, on a fairly stationary fighter in Francis Ngannou, who had a good performance against Tyson Fury. But I don't think Tyson Fury took that fight serious for 1 second until he was knocked down.
They also highlight Joshua's shift in fighting style from bulldozing opponents to a more cautious, safety-first approach. Critics say this makes him vulnerable against someone who lets his hands go and stays aggressive. At the same time, they credit Jake Paul for evolving over time, gaining punching power, improving his cardio, and tightening his basic skills. From this perspective, the age gap and the way both fighters have looked recently add layers of intrigue to a fight many originally dismissed.
incredibly well for Paul. He's not going to land on Joshua, is he? Joshua's going to be far too skilled in evading whatever Jake Paul could throw at him.
Because I don't believe he's an evading fighter. I think he's one of those fighters that is extremely powerful to where a fighter is simply afraid. The problem is that all of the pressure's on Joshua at the moment. So Jake Paul, if he gets knocked out in 12 seconds, he should get knocked out. The problem is as soon as Joshua starts taking damage, all of a sudden he's thinking, the world is watching me, I'm a professional fighter, and I'm getting beat off a YouTuber. All of the pressure is in Joshua, and that's a lot that can weigh on a man.
Jake Paul can't damage him, though.
People can damage him, though. He's went down.
People can.
Well,
people can. Yeah. No, Alexander Usyk can. Daniel Dubois can. These are supreme athletes. Jake,
completely correct. Yes, there's a difference in someone who's been boxing their entire life versus a YouTuber. I completely understand that, but you can't deny that Jake Paul has power. I think it's one of his only attributes. I think he's a very poor boxer, but what he does have is a weird technique where you don't know what.
How do we know he's got power? How do we know he's got power?
He's knocked people out.
What, Ben Askren and Tyron Woodley?
Tyron Woodley was arguably one of the best UFC fighters there's ever been.
Like,
no, mate, I'm not suggesting that. I'm not suggesting that he's going to go in there and walk Joshua all over. But you can't deny that he has lights out power.
I would deny that. I would deny that he has that kind of power.
Yeah, in an amateur boxing ring, yeah, fine. But not against a two-time world champion.
I do. Again, I understand the contempt in what I'm saying, and I do see how it is completely stupid thinking a YouTuber could break Anthony Joshua. But the thing is that he's going to be training for this fight. Joshua has all of the world looking at him thinking you should walk him over. If it gets 2 rounds, 3 rounds inside, I think Joshua loses.
Yeah.
You think he gets beat?
I mean, I think the pressure will get to him. I think if he loses to Jake Paul, he's the embarrassment to boxing. And if you get inside 3 rounds where you've not put him away like everyone thinks you will, all of a sudden that pressure to finish the fight as he should is going to gain and gain and gain.
Is there any truth in this, Jamie? Can you see a world where Dan's theory is basically this geezer can punch and he therefore has a puncher's chance? I think he's got no chance. Like slim, if none.
No.
None. Literally none.
No chance.
It's one of them, innit? I honestly, without going like extreme, Dan, I think Anthony Joshua, if he could only use one hand, wins the fight. I honestly do.
This is the thing, and I love Joshua. You know, he's arguably the pride of Britain when it comes to boxing. He's a great fighter. But could you say he's past his best? Could you say that he's been tested too many times? The thing that it relates to me is when you look at Silva in the UFC, as soon as he got knocked out, his chin became glass. And I think that's the same with Joshua. I don't think he can take a punch anymore. I think he's one of those people where it's almost, he damages way too easy now. And it's one of those things where I think when you're a boxer and you've had a few defeats and you've had a few lights out moments.
Olympic boxer Tony Jeff offered another take on why Jake shouldn't be underestimated. He emphasized that Jake has access to every high-level resource a fighter could want, from elite coaches and conditioning specialists to nutrition experts, psychologists, and top sparring partners. Jeff argued that Jake's financial ability to build a flawless training camp removes a lot of limitations other fighters face. He also pointed out Jake's youth advantage, reminding fans that younger athletes recover quicker, train with more intensity, and often enter fights with fresher bodies and sharper energy.
The age difference, we've got 28 years old compared to 36 years old. So I guess the advantage there goes a little bit towards Jake Paul. 28-year-old is better than a 36-year-old. But that being said, we've got talking about experience and everything else, what comes with being 36 years old at Anthony Joshua's level. And then, like I mentioned, the heavyweights kind of seem to prime a little bit older. Now, come down to the height and the weight. This is the big one. 6'1" versus 6'6". 200 pound versus 252 pound. We got a 252 pounder in Anthony Joshua. The reach advantage is a lot, which we would expect. Amateur fights, we can see that Jake's only had one, where AJ's at 43, but 43 of them are included at the highest level, Olympic level. And yes, he won the Olympic bloody gold medal, if I don't need to remind you. Now, then the pro record, Jake Paul has had 13 fights, lost 1. AJ has had 28 fights and he's lost 4 with 25 KOs. And the one person that Jake Paul lost to was Tommy Fury. Now, can we compare Tommy Fury with Anthony Joshua? Not at all. It's like night and day. So now I'm going to talk about the rules of this fight, and I'll give you my prediction which is going to shock a lot of people after this. So, what are the rules? The bout will take place at a heavyweight, obviously. It's going to be 8 3-minute rounds. You might think, well, that's better for Jake Paul, and I'm thinking, not really. It's better for Anthony Joshua because he's just going to go all out for them 8 3-minute rounds. And imagine that, Anthony Joshua blasting at you, 6'6", whatever he is, 250 pounds, throwing big bombs at you. Anyway, both fighters will be using 10-ounce gloves for the duration of the contest. Why have they got that? It says both fighters will be wearing 10-ounce gloves for the duration of the contest. What do you expect? Them to take them off halfway through and switch them to 12s? I guess these days anything happens in boxing, right? The boys will follow similar rules to Jake Paul and Mike Tyson in November, but that fight was 8 2-minute rounds and 14-ounce gloves. Not similar if it's smaller clubs and 2-minute rounds. Who wrote this for DAZN? It marks the first time Joshua will have contested less than 10 rounds since 2015.
On the other side, analysts pointed to a broader issue inside boxing. The sport itself created this scenario. Despite Joshua being a former world champion, an Olympic gold medalist, Jake Paul's offer still became one of the biggest paydays of AJ's career. That alone, they argue, shows how dramatically the business side of boxing has shifted. Jake Paul brings more buzz, more views, and more financial pull than many legitimate contenders. So when critics blame Joshua for accepting the fight, experts push back, saying fighters naturally gravitate toward the biggest purse available. As for the claims that Joshua can't take a punch, any more analysts noted that losing to a natural heavyweight like Dubois doesn't automatically translate into weakness against a cruiserweight-sized puncher like Jake. They argue that Joshua still has championship-caliber ability, real knockout power, and a depth of experience that could allow him to win convincingly, provided he stays sharp and disciplined.
Jake Paul, and this is the real funny thing, he's giving Anthony Joshua, Jake Paul is giving Anthony Joshua, the heavyweight legend, right, in our lifetime, his career high payday. Jake Paul is a fucking A-side. Jake Paul is saying, you're going to be at 245 maximum, motherfucker. Like, Jake Paul's giving orders here. Jake Paul's first on the fucking headline. Like, that is also blowing my mind. Even Eddie Hearn said in an interview earlier this week, he's going to get more for this than he's going to get to fight Tyson Fury if the Fury fight happens. Like, and speaking of Tyson Fury, this brings me on to you, Joey Knight. How the fuck has Tyson Fury let Jake Paul put the gloves on and get in there with Anthony Joshua before he did? How are you going to fucking look your mate in the eye?
Fury probably had the offer, mate. He's not into the old circus shows. You know what I mean? He's not into all that malarkey.
Oh my God.
He's probably fuming that his brother didn't get the fight, to be honest with you. But listen, I don't know, man. Like, I look at this fight with Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, and you constantly hear it. You heard it with Mayweather and McGregor, and you hear it with so many fights. Does it damage their legacy? I would like you to give me an example of a time someone's legacy has been damaged. From an individual fight. No, but Ngannou Fury ain't really, has it? Like, what I'm saying is, I think that having fights over a prolonged period of time, like Roy Jones Jr., that can damage your legacy. But a one-off fight where realistically you're not going to take no damage. But then, do you know what this leads me on to?